and welcome to another episode of Wine Wednesdays, where we wine and then refine our thinking. Today we're going to be talking about why do so many different clean living pages disagree with one another? Why do some people recommend some products or brands and then other ones say that they're bad? How do we know what to listen to? If you feel me in this struggle, then keep watching. Let's first cue the theme song. Today we're drinking a Natura. This is one of my favorite brands because it is so easily accessible, probably at your local grocery store, or just at some sort of liquor store. I don't know. It's becoming a very popular brand, and it's cheap, which is my favorite. This is like $10 where I am, so that's cool. This is the Cab Sauv. It's nice and dry, not sweet at all, completely organic. I really like it. I do believe this brand also, yes, they have the EcoCert certification, which is awesome. All right. Let's get to it, because we got a lot to cover today, guys. First a sip. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about 5 reasons, at least why I think, different pages disagree. We're going to start with number 5. And then at the end, we're going to talk about why my page is different, of what I try to do, and what my philosophies are compared to some of the other ones that we're going to discuss, and how to know for yourself who to listen to, right? Okay, so let's start at the bottom. Number 5 of why different pages, I've compiled this list, my opinion, of 5 different main reasons why big pages or various people within the clean living space disagree. Okay, number 5, and then we'll work our way up to the top of what I think is the most reason, whatever the word is. Okay, number 5. Baseline here, just starting out. People are not operating out of a growth mindset. And they're unwilling to believe that they could or might be wrong, and they don't handle new information really well, okay? I think just starting out, that I see over and over and over again. The amount of times that I have reached out to a page with one of my posts, backed up research, and gave them a lot of different, hey, you're claiming and you're posting about how our bodies absorb 60% to what we put on it. Here is a lot of scientific evidence. I have over 200 pages of a compiled document on that one and others. Proving how this is wrong. Can I share this with you? And I try to say it as nicely as possible. The amount of people who block me or say really hateful things or just don't listen at all, and just write it off and not even consider the information is unreal, okay? It's very discouraging, actually, how many people are like that. The whining, by the way, is going to be amidst all of this, okay? All right. Because the fact that we even have so many different pages saying so many different things is absolutely ridiculous. Who has time for this? Who has time to go through? You'd think we already have enough opposition as it is. We already have all the other doctors and the normal brands saying everything on the shelves is safe, and if it wasn't safe, it wouldn't be on the shelves, and everything is fine. And so we're already working against that, and then you come into this space and we can't even agree on this space. Not surprising, but still, it's frustrating because who has time to sort through all this information? And how do you know which ones to listen to? Okay, there's some whining. We'll continue, but All right, moving on. I think that's the main one. There's just a lot of people who really just believe that what they've heard or what they, once held is just right and nothing else is correct. Okay? All right, that rolls right into number 4. People don't research for themselves a lot of times, and they're just kind of going off of what other people are saying or what they're hearing or another big page that they trust, and they're not actually doing the digging for themselves. So it kind of just becomes this big telephone game of well, they said, and so I'm saying this, and well, I saw these accounts all saying this, and whatever. And so now we've just got this echo chamber of people saying all of the same things. But when you really look at it, where did the base of all this start? Just some random claim. Just to give an example, there was a claim about an ingredient in toothpaste, glycerin, that is harmful to the teeth and or could be bad for absorption of other minerals or something like that, blah, blah, blah. Trace it back to, it ended up just being a blog post. And that's not even substantiated by anything. So that's a good example of where did we get this from? I don't know. Another one that I have that I've written about a lot is beeswax. in candles, and the claim that it can clean the air because of the negative ions. I've addressed this a lot. I'll post below maybe like a post that I've done on this, kind of breaking this down, but go back to it, and where does this really originate from? Nowhere. A bunch of big blogs claiming it, and a bunch of like faulty ideas of how negative ions work, and next thing you know, everybody's claiming it, and all the candle companies are claiming it, but what do they actually have research-wise to back it up? Nothing. There's nothing on it. I talk more about that in my candle post. I'll put that down here. Okay, so I think that this happens a lot more than what people realize, and these are the people too that often fall for the greenwashing terms and you know, just kind of go off of what the companies are even claiming for themselves, which is getting more and more difficult, or they're just like following these rigid rules of avoiding certain things and then only believing that that's the only way, and that if you don't like completely avoid that, then it's automatically bad. Like for instance, you know, people who hold to the rigid rule that like fragrance on a label is always a bad thing. Well, sometimes if you just, for instance, just look on the website, they don't have it on the physical bottle label, but then on the website, they actually do have everything completely disclosed. So now we're like throwing out this brand because we're looking at the label and talking about it, but then they're not even doing the research to see that it's actually very easy to, you know, break down what you're saying because you just look on the website. Always why I say brand researching people and not just reading the ingredients label on a product, okay? But I think that happens more than what people realize. There's a lot of greenwashing pages that I get mad that they're like so big or like they keep getting bigger because I'm like, oh, it's wrong information that they're sharing and it's not based on anything. So that just gets really frustrating. Okay, number 3. I think we have to understand that everyone is coming at this from a different worldview and philosophy when it comes to what they believe is called clean or non-toxic. So maybe someone who's come from like a family with autoimmune problems or cancer, or you know, or they themselves have something, they've survived from cancer and they've gone through chemo, they have to be extra careful. I think there's a lot of instances like that where when you're exposed to stuff like that, you're gonna err more on the cautious side. So when someone's saying, no, the synthetic ingredient is totally fine, they're more hesitant to hear it, you know, or they're more like cautious about it because they're like, oh, it doesn't really, I just want to be extra careful. So I think that people confuse their preferences with what they're then dogmatically preaching as what is like everyone should then avoid it. Well, just because you're having to avoid it doesn't necessarily mean it's always wrong for everyone. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it's not. So I think that can get like kind of confusing because they tend to be in this like black or white mindset of it's only this or that, when really there's so much more nuance than what people realize when it comes to answering the question, is something safe for human health? So what something might be safe for me and my body, it might be not really safe for someone who's just gone through chemo. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's kind of hard and can add some light maybe on, you know, why different people are like, oh, this one definitely isn't good. And also I think that when something is like, something is even like manufactured, fun fact, a lot of the concerns when it comes to ingredients and stuff really has to just do with the manufacturing. If it's manufactured correctly, there's actually a lot less of a risk or no risk at all for it being contaminated with what is actually the problem. So I don't think a lot of people even realize that, you know, that kind of rolls into number 2 here. When it comes to ingredients, people are pretty quick to throw out a product or a brand that uses such and such ingredient instead of asking more in-depth questions of like, well, what's the dose? Does the dose make the poison here? What's the route of exposure? I've done a post on this that I'll also put in the comments here or in the description. But I think that that's something that not a lot of people consider. It's easier to have a black and white mindset and just be like, we're throwing this out together, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But what gets tricky is then when those people are dogmatically saying to everyone else that that's the only correct way, and then everyone else is believing it. When they're not understanding it, there's actually more nuances to it than that. Does that make sense? Okay. I think that it's really hard to, like I said, the manufacturing is such a hard side of it. Even just asking, what is this derived from and how is this manufactured? It changes so much about the safety of then that ingredient. So it's very hard to be black and white with this ingredient is always bad, always. Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes that is true. Sometimes the dose doesn't matter. Endocrine disruptors, you know, that doesn't matter then. It's like, yep, nope, avoid them. So it's just hard. Okay, which brings us to the very top reason why I believe that we have the most, you know, nuance or disagreement rather when it comes to all these big pages, is that we're not looking at the whole picture. We're just focusing on one particular thing. So to call out a couple big pages, just to be honest, Mamavation, Lead Safe Mama, Give Me the Good Stuff, Wellness Mama, right? Just a couple, right? Leah from Mamavation, wonderful, really stuck on the PFAS thing right now, which is great, and is wonderful, and I think is valid. But she'll then recommend products that just because they tested safe from no PFAS, will say it's better, but that brand is made by Clorox. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of hard, because I think that's what gets tricky, is when they've become an expert in that niche, that it's then hard to separate that niche or understand that there's other niches to also consider. So, you know, same kind of thing. Like Leah will look at, for Mamavation, she'll look at ingredients and stuff too. It's not just, she'll look at transparency and stuff. But, you know, there's a couple things that she zones in on. One of them is the PFAS testing that she does. That's huge. Lead Safe Mama, she's testing with the XRF machine. And so she's looking at the heavy metals, obviously lead, and her story is really big with her kids. Again, worldview. Her kids have been damaged by lead poisoning, or her brains have been, you know, damaged by lead poisoning. And so that's her niche that she drives in on, right? So she'll be recommending products that then maybe, okay, well, it doesn't really work with this then. See, it's like they kind of contradict. So I think that there's this tendency to kind of just like follow one person and then just go with what they say, but then not realize the whole picture of, just because something tested safe, like I'm saying, for, you know, from PFAS or whatever, from this, or because something didn't have heavy metals in it, it doesn't necessarily always mean that it's correct then, or like that it's 100% safe, because there's always other things to consider. Well, how was it manufactured? What other ingredients? What were they derived from? You know, you add all those things together, and then you're seeing a more complete picture of what creates something that is safe or not safe for human health. So it's never just the one thing. Again, just looking at only ingredients. It's the same thing. You're looking at only ingredients, but you're not looking at what's it derived from, how is it manufactured, who's making it. It makes a really big difference. So I think that that really is like the number one thing that I see the most is, you know, it'll be like, oh no, Lead Safe Mama said this is terrible. I have to throw it out now. I mean, maybe, but maybe not. Compare it with what you're seeing from other things to get that fuller picture, right? Because just because something, because here's the thing, guys. Each of these testings, I'm going to just let you in on a secret. XRF machine, leach testing, heavy metals testing, contamination, microbial testing, the PFAS testing. Every single one of these tests, while great, only show a partial picture of the whole picture, and they each have their limits, okay? Testing organic fluoride or organic fluorine for PFAS, right? It has its limitations to it. It's not always 100% accurate. You can't take it at face value every single time. That's always what that, you know, something is containing this, something is containing that, this contains X ingredient, throw it out. Sometimes not though. So overall, what would be my recommendation here of how to actually, you know, figure out what you're supposed to use or what's going to work for you? At the end of the day, it really comes down to trust. It comes down to who do you trust and who do they trust and who do I trust, right? So if you don't trust someone, that's fine. But just because maybe you don't trust someone doesn't mean someone else shouldn't trust that someone or influencer or company or whatever it is, right? So it's kind of hard to be like dogmatic on that. But I would say like try to figure out what your criteria is, right? Find what you align with, and then follow different influencers or brands or whatever that also align with that, while also being open-minded to hear other things, right? But you know, don't just, number 2, don't just throw out a product just because an influencer says to. Ask why. Like, just because they're saying this ingredient is bad, this product is terrible, figure out why and see if it really aligns with what your criteria is. Because someone may be throwing something out just because they are trying to stay away from all synthetics, but you know that science doesn't actually back up that all synthetics are terrible always. So they can choose to do that if they want to. They want to be overly cautious. For those who are doing that, say that that's what it is. Say in the name of being overly cautious. Don't just say this is bad for everyone always. Yeah, I'm being overly cautious. I understand that science doesn't really, doesn't say exactly the same thing. Doesn't matter. I'm still sticking with this. You do you. That's fine. You just can't dogmatically then say that everyone else should be thinking the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So don't just go off of one person. Don't even listen to just me. Try to fact check what I'm saying too. Go off of what others are saying. Combine it all together, right? And try to search for the bigger picture. and understand that you are your own best advocate, right? What I'm trying to do on this channel is to try to not just have people pick things that work, or, you know, just pick what I'm saying to use or not use. It's to teach you how to fish, not just hand you the fish, right? Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for, what's the saying? Give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, and he will eat forever. Like, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm honestly, at the end of the day, I mean, sometimes I give fish too, but I'm trying to teach you how to fish yourself so that you can figure it out and you can figure out what best aligns with you. So really what I try to do, just honestly, is if you think of this all as a Venn diagram, okay, of this over here is all of what, you know, I fill in the blank with whatever pages or whatever it is, Wellness Mama or Mama Natural or, you know, Momavation, Lead Safe Mama, combine them all together, and you know that where they all overlap in that little thing in the middle, that's where I try to operate out of. I try to take it all into consideration. We're taking into consideration the ingredients, the manufacturing, the heavy metal contamination, the, you know, other whatever, BPA and PFAS and all that stuff, and understanding that who owns who, and follow the money and look at the science and the literature and really see if actually this is very easily contradictable by just understanding how the skin works. You know what I'm saying? I really try to take all that into consideration, you know, while also balancing like traditional, you know, wisdom or conventional wisdom and traditional medicines and experiences from people, but then also looking at, well, also what does the scientific and medical literature have to say about this? Because a lot of times it's refutable, okay? So all this to say, don't just go off of one person, right? Compare it to what other people are saying. Find who you align with, but also have an open mind and understand that there's a lot more nuance here. Not to say that it doesn't matter, it does, and not to say that everything's really fine. No, that's not what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, it is a lot more gray than what people think that it is, you know? Or just my version of clean might be different from your version of clean, and that's fine. Okay, all right. So if you stuck around for that, bless you. And yeah, so cheers.